I'm gonna step away for a sec. I'll be right back.
Okay. Welcome everybody to the architecture meeting on May 23rd. I dropped the link in the chat. Go ahead and sign in. And I'm just waiting for Discord to start. So last week or last time we met, we talked about the Hero project around CD events and some of the challenges that we're going to have uh, around the CD events. And Sasha, you're brave enough to stand up the NAT server during our meeting, so
Mm,
that seemed pretty easy to get up and running. Did you have a chance to play around with any of the examples?
I haven't yet, no, but I
Okay,
will. Yeah,
no problem.
I was actually trying to deploy, that was easy, but GitLab is not so easy because they don't seem to support ARM.
Oh, geez.
There is an ARM, I found it, but now I was trying to I was trying to change the containers that where it's pulling from, to override the Helm chart, but it just refused and kept on pulling the same one from GitLabs, and
Ah,
GitLabs doesn't support ARM.
right.
Because somebody else made a ARM container. Yeah, I got a little bit down that rabbit hole. That's why I didn't play with Nats. Yeah.
No problem. Just looking for this presentation, and I can't find it right now, so I will. Once I find the presentation, I'll send it out and tell you which page to look at. Um, so basically, based on our last conversations, what I want to do is to um, just do some brainstorming before we get into really diving into full requirements documentation. Um, and that way we can just kind of throw some ideas out there and give us a general direction that we want to go in as we start to formalize some of the requirements. So, um, just at a high level, we're working on the NATS. The NATS is a project out of the CNCF. Basically, it's a resilient message broker that Sasha was able to stand up, and there's some examples. I believe from what I read in the documentation, it'll support the pub sub of cloud events, which is what CD events is layered on top of. So I think we'll be good on that front. When we write the requirements documentation, we'll I think we can investigate some other ones that may be out there. But I think for what we have for today, the Nats is a good way to kind of hang our hat off of for now. And then we can, when we get into the requirements documentation, look at other avenues that may be better. But at least it's something for a straw man to work from. One of the things that for implementing the CD events, as we talked about last week, was um, the goal to do CD events without changing any of the existing workflows. So, Sasha, you're going to get work with the GitLab to run GitLab locally to
Mm,
see how GitLab behaves. So some of the major CI/CD pipelines, we have GitLab, GitHub, Jenkins, obviously, Tecton, Spinnaker, Screwdriver. There's other ones out there like Circle CI, uh, but I don't. And what's the other one? Travis CI.
mm.
Some of those other ones that are being used, I think we should just pick a couple of the big ones and kind of focus around that when we write the requirements docs. I would say personally it would be Jenkins, GitHub and GitLab would be our top three to kind of focus around. Does that make sense to everybody
Hmm.
as a starting point? Let me share my screen and we'll start taking some notes.
I put the command in the Jib channel that I was trying to use to override the GitLab, so I could use the ARM containers.
Okay, I'll take a look at that later and see what we need to do. Was it a Helm chart that they gave you?
Yeah, so I was using, I've got it here, charts.gitlab.io. Then I did a Helm set, global image. I tried global image, and I pointed it to a different registry and an image version, image tag, but it was stubborn. It just didn't refused. I was like, maybe there's something I didn't know. Yeah.
So we have GitHub, GitLab, and Jenkins. Um, so if we look at the process of the events, like we talked last time, some of the like in the Jenkins side, you can install a plugin into Jenkins that would start publishing events. But the only events that it's going to publish are going to be the starting of a workflow and the ending of a workflow. Is from what I've been told by Mark Waite. There may be more details around some of the other plugins that Jenkins has, but one of the things that you have to do is to actually go in there, install the plugin by a Jenkins administrator, configure it, and do those things. So the pathway to adoption is kind of it's not hard. It's an easy thing to do, but I think it's going to be a lower priority on the Jenkins front. So we do have a pathway to adoption that we have to overcome. Let me just do installing a plugin. And I started thinking about on the GitHub side, it's even more complicated. Because if our goal is to do CD events without having to modify any workflows, if you think about on the GitHub Actions side, if you want to capture or trigger an event when a GitHub action starts, you're going to have to go and update. Let's say we have a little program, a little action that we tell people to implement that would go ahead and kick off or publish a starting workflow event. And then we have to, at the end of the workflow, we want to publish that the workflow finished event. In order to do that, we'd have to, again, install another action into their workflows, which becomes problematic because that's what we're trying to avoid. So one of the things that I was thinking was we may want to do this passively, where we actually look at the results of a GitHub action and look at the log files and then kind of trigger out the log, the events post run of the workflow. So you necessarily wouldn't have a starting workflow and an ending workflow. So let's say we could post process the log file, and we could say that the workflow started at 1 o'clock, and then it finished at 1:15. Um, but then we would actually come along with our process and read that workflow log at 1:20, so we're like 5 minutes late, and then we would kick out the appropriate events. We could backdate the events saying that this actually happened in the past, that the workflow started at 1:15 and started at 1 o'clock, ended at 1:15 type of thing. And then we go ahead and throw out the events in the middle. That may be our best way to get started, like with the GitHub action and the Jenkins, because I think we could fit that model across our top three CI/CD tools at that level without having to really invade into those tools. Does that make sense? Kind of? All right. So post-processing.
I think it does. The tools don't really natively share their status.
Not really. There are APIs that you can use to look at the statuses. So there is like a GitHub API that you can query and kind of do this polling and start reading what's happening with the workflows. But one of the weird things when I've been working on the badges for tomorrow because we have to give out the badges, and the GitHub rate limiting for their APIs is a real pain. You only get 1,000 queries an hour, and you can blow through that really quick. So that's one of the tricky parts that we'll have to put into the requirements is how to deal with the rate limiting of APIs. So there's ways around that. So for example, on the GitHub side, you could look at a RSS feed. So the RSS feed, you can actually query the RSS feed for a repo and see if anything kicked off or was published without without using the GitHub API. So that's a way to get around some of the API rate limiting. But that's specific to GitHub. We'll have to see what GitLab does, and also for Jenkins. I don't think Jenkins has a rate limiting because it's usually installed internally to a company. There's not really like a public Jenkins world like GitHub has. So one of the things I was thinking of is how do we turn on events? So I had a conversation with one of the Docker guys last week. So he suggested that we could make make a coding change and a pull request against the Docker engine that would allow us to go ahead and broadcast, put code in there that would broadcast the events. So, which would be pretty cool because if we got that code merged into the Docker engine, we could then start publishing events like when a Docker build was started, and when a Docker build was finished, when a publish was started, when a publish was finished, that type of thing. We could automatically start doing that for every workflow that's out there that's using Docker. So one of the things that we need to figure out is how do we turn it on.
Hmm. I thought you just pushed a button, Steve.
I wish the big giant red button in the sky for all of software.
Isn't that how IT works? You just push a button.
Yep.
Isn't that
Yeah. Didn't
damn.
you know GitHub had that at the org level at the
I love it. How the marketing is such a gap between marketing and engineering. Uh, oh, here's the digest. Okay.
so let's just take the the top three. Let's say we take Jenkins. I think on the Jenkins side, there's like a global environment variable section. I wish Arvin was here because he'd know.
Yeah, he's writing exams. I pinged him.
You have at the plugin level or workflow level, which means that you have to make a workflow update. So that one's not quite as good. That's basically back to where we're going again. And then the other thing I was thinking of would be a like a config file in the repo, and that could be in the repo or in the .github repo, in the project repo or in the org repo. And GitHub Actions. I looked into global environment variables for GitHub, and you had the GitHub secrets and stuff, so you can define like environment variables at the org level and stuff. But in order to consume them, you have to modify your workflow file to reference them. So we're back to you can have global variables, but you do need to do a workflow level update. And the other thing we could do at the GitHub level is also a config file. Sasha, do you know anything about GitLab? You've used it before, right?
Yeah, I have.
Do you know if
So
GitLab
what?
has a concept of like global environment variables?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I'd have to go and look. I was helping Arvind at one stage. I haven't used it for so long, so I can't actually remember.
Yeah,
But there might be. Because you mean like global environment rails where you can set them and all projects can consume from them?
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean. Bitbucket definitely has that. And if Bitbucket has it, then the others must have it because Bitbucket is horrible.
Yeah, yeah. I keep on trying to forget about Bitbucket.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. So then, like, because you've always got global variables that can be used by every single project. You don't want it to just be for a project specific. It's not a specific variable. Yeah. know what
Yeah.
you mean. And then you can just call it.
Yeah.
Does GitHub not have that?
GitHub has a global environment variable. So if I could go to Ortelius here.
Let's have a look here.
So if we look at, where is
I'm
it?
doing
Developer.
uh, I'm doing a quick Kaji here.
No, it's secrets and variables.
It says yeah, CI/CD components variables, but what type of
So like
variables?
here are all of our environment variables that we use. Like cosine, our cosine private and public key are out there as org level environment variables. But if
Oh
we
yeah.
want to use them, you actually have to have your workflow reference it. So if we look at one of
Uh,
our workflows, so we'll look at the Docker build one.
so you can't just set it on a
You just can't
pipeline
set
config
it and have
file.
like a Node.js or a Golang program
Yeah.
reference it.
Ah, that's quite annoying.
So what we have to do is,
Wonder why they chose that.
I think they want to give people the ability to really have control, so people just
Mm,
don't sneak things in.
yeah,
So,
true.
so if we look at the Docker push sign,
Looks like GitLab supports it, eh? I found a doc here. I'll post it for everybody. I'll
now
stick
the
it in this
interesting
thing.
thing is, I wonder how they do this. I'll have to double check. Because looking at the cosine steps, so this is where we do a cosine sine. We don't have an environment variable that references the public and private keys. So they must be coming from a global environment variable somewhere. Let's see if we
Mm.
have anything
I put the link for everybody in this meeting and in the Discord channel on Dev.
Okay, cool.
GitLab CI/CD variables.
So it looks like on the GitHub side, we may be able to do an environment variable.
Oh, cool.
We'll have to do some more investigation on that front, because that may be a way to. I'll have to look at how the cosine works. I think this is a public program.
The sad thing is I never get to work at a company that uses GitHub. I always end up having to use nasty things.
Yeah, so that could be interesting. And if okay, GitHub global environment variables may forgive my grammar here.
Uh, they've also got global variables page for Helm charts. I'm just putting that as a
for
bonus to
for Git
confuse everybody even more.
for GitLab.
Yeah, yeah. But that's for Helm charts, right? So,
Well, when you
seems
get
quite
GitLab
odd.
up and running, we'll have to do that. Now I know on the Jenkins side, you don't once you set the global variable, it's good to go.
Mm, yeah, I'll use Jenkins and works well for global variables,
Yeah.
like secrets or anything like that. You can just call them from any pipeline.
Yep.
Yeah, works
Exactly.
very well. Yeah.
So I think our two options are going to be the likely candidates.
What was the other pipelines you mentioned? Apart from GitLab and GitHub, you said Tecton, did you?
Tecton.
Okay.
Tecton runs in a
Oh,
Kubernetes cluster, so I'm sure you could
I
set
could
something
run
at
that
the,
too.
yeah, you could set that at the Kubernetes level to pass
Mm,
along the environment variables.
yeah. I'll just also post for everybody, if you're using ARM, here's the Docker containers that support ARM that somebody kindly created.
Yeah, you may have to go in and just pull down that Helm chart for GitLab and just manually overwrite it.
Mm. Yeah, I was trying to do that even with the Argo CD creation and Argo CD creation time, right? So like delete the whole app and just redeploy it with this registry Helm set override, but it didn't like me. I'm probably missing something.
Yeah. So one of the things I was thinking about is if we're able to is the config file side. Um, so that would be pretty. Let's say you're like for us, we wanted to implement events for everything that's happening inside of our GitHub Actions. That we could, and we want to publish events and where to publish them to. If we went to our, we have this repo, the way GitHub works, uh, and this is the way they handle like licenses and stuff. So if you have a GitHub repo, it's like at the org level. So if one of our, let's say one of our microservice repos doesn't have a license file, it will actually pick up the license file from this .github repo. So we could do something along those same lines with a config file. So you could drop in a CD events JSON file, for example, just like you have the megalinter or whatever we want to call it, or the renovate. We could drop in a config file at this level, give the config information that's there. Um, Tools like Docker, when it's doing a Docker build, can go check for the existence of that config file, pull the configuration data from it, and then publish the events if it exists. So that's one of the things that we could do to make it pretty seamless on the config file side. At that level, there would be no need to um, have like an administrator go into the org level, set secrets, and those type of things. So it could be done without having a lot of overhead, put it that way, on the config file side. Also, I think the config file would work for, like you said, Bitbucket. Who knows if Bitbucket has global environment variables?
Mm, they
Um,
do. They do.
uh, oh,
I've
cool.
used it. I've tortured myself with Bitbucket because, like I say, I'm a magnet for all the
All the bad
all the
CI/CD tools,
yeah.
or I
I
won't
don't know.
say
I
bad,
just
the difficult ones.
yeah. It's the same when I go driving. I tracked all the sand lorries, the learner drivers, and the and the pickup trucks, and always on a mountain pass.
Yeah, we could actually even do both. We could do a possible.
I'm very familiar with Bitbucket, so if you wanted to test that out, I could do it for you. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I think that may be a decent way to go. Is actually do both. That way we kind of cover our bases. If somebody wants to be a little more flexible on how people want to interact with the CD events, giving that location. One thing with the using a config file, we can put more data in there saying we want you to do this CD events for everything in the org except for this one repo, for example. um, which is a little bit easier to do than at an environment variable level. So I'm going to say Steve is leaning towards config files.
Ah, config files. It's like documentation in code because you can
Yeah,
comment and stuff, right? And you can say what it's for, so people can get a quick idea of what's going on there.
it is more uh, the as code methodology.
Mm. Everything's code now, so we might as well go there, right?
Yeah, it's and not hidden.
Yeah.
Any other ideas on how we could turn things on and off? There is always a database, but you have a well-known database that you could look up.
So what you want to do is store variables that hold the state for various things.
What we want to do is to be able to turn on or off CD events. So
Like a
based
feature
on,
flag.
yeah, exactly.
So is
It
that a
is.
singular flag or is it more than one?
I think it may end up being more than one. So, like I said in the recent example, I want to turn on CD events for all of my repositories except for these two that are secure repositories I don't want to publish events for. So in that scenario, we would have more than one piece of data that we would need to work with.
Okay, and is that visible? I guess the visibility question is the other one. If you want it visible across containers, for example, is that true?
Yes, you'd want it across CI/CD workflows.
Okay, so you couldn't store it as a state table held in memory backed by a database. Not
Probably, probably not.
Yeah. What you could do is simply have what amounts to the representation of the state table in a database that's accessible by any interested parties and leave to them whether they read it into memory, which is probably what I'd want to do, and hold it there. And you'd need some way to tell that it's been updated in the database and refresh what's held in memory.
Yep,
I mean, that's not a very unusual problem.
right. Now the question of using a database is getting the initial data into the database.
Copy
So,
paste.
how do you turn things on or off? Is it, to quote Sasha, pushing a button or is it something else?
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Well, in the idea of a config file, the config file, if it exists, then you go and look in the config file, and one of the parameters in the config file would be this is the message broker that I want to talk to. So basically, the URL of the message broker that I want to talk to when I go out and send an event out. That's where it's going to go off to. So that's going to be the piece of information is going to be who am I talking to from an event perspective.
Mm. So is the feature flag idea, would that be a way of doing it? But would we have to build something custom?
That would I'd have to look at it's the concept that we're going after.
Mm.
Um,
Well, it seems that you're going to want to consume configuration information. How long do you want to persist it for?
uh, it would it would be persisted until it's turned off. I don't know if that makes sense. So if somebody turns it on, let's say they have a Jenkins server running and they turn on CD events,
Mhm.
that would live for, let's say, 2 years. That configuration would be running, and then somebody wants to either turn off CD events for a specific workflow, or they'd want to turn off CD events altogether. So it's going to be a long. Uh,
Okay.
uh, does that
So
answer your question?
that's his database again.
Yep.
Mm.
Um, there'll have to be some degree of security around that. If I was going to do something malicious to a s- a flow, one of the first things I'd want to do is turn off CD events, do what I wanted to do, and turn it back on again.
Right.
So that says we have to have some notion of, authorization to do such a thing. So someone has to not only present the configuration changes, but a credential that gives them the right to do this.
Yep. And that's one of the things using a config file that's stored in a Git repo is there's built-in security already. Um, the whole PR process, all that we can
Mhm.
leverage. That's one of the instead of having in a database. Doesn't mean that we can't in a database create that security layer, but it does become more complicated.
We should avoid creating our own security layer if we can.
Yeah, I vote for that too. It is a lot of work. All right. Any other? Does anybody want to take a stab at looking into um, feature flags, products that are out there that are open source? Hang on, I got a new.
Uh, Flagsmith is open source.
Hang on, my
Open
puppies.
flags.
Ugh,
Yeah.
I have a new puppy that's saw Tracy leave, and
Oh,
now she's wants to be
oh,
on my desk.
that's so cute.
What's his name?
This is Osa,
So
which
cute.
means bear in Spanish.
Wow, cool, man.
Awesome.
Osa.
So she's just gonna hang out for the meeting. She's bored by our meeting. Um, so
See?
yeah, if somebody could, is anybody willing to take a look at a feature flag? Uh, just a quick look to see how they do it. How they turn feature flags on and off. If it's like database or config file, just so we could get
You
some of
know,
the ideas.
I'll post a video. He sent me a great one, and he
So
did it. What's that guy
they,
from Australia?
I think,
Ben.
Cool.
Yeah.
What was that, Arvin?
yeah. I think they in the front end UI we can turn on and off the feature flag, and when you create a new feature flag, it will create an API for it. So you will use it using the API.
Right. So if we wanted to use feature flags, so one of the tricky things is remember um, if we can't change the coding of like a GitHub action or GitHub itself, so we won't be able to go in and make API calls or make coding changes for feature flags in like GitHub. Um, but we should, so we won't be able to use a feature flag tool. But we should look at the concepts that they use to turn feature flags on and off. If they, like Tony is saying, saving it in a database, a config file, environment variable, or if there's some other way that we're totally missing to turn stuff on and off. No, stay down off
But
the.
could we not? I know, like I don't know. This is just my brain thinking. It's like I know something you say open feature, for example. I posted the link to everybody in the chat, and it's like, oh, this is only for development feature flags. But why couldn't we try test using the same tooling, but for our use case? Could we manipulate it? Even,
Let's
you know what I
see.
mean?
Yeah, most of the feature flag they only works on the API.
It's because
Yeah,
We can do
it's
one
because I'm
thing
from
that
yeah.
we we can write custom bash script and we can run
Like
those script.
like if
right.
you're looking
But
to block your door, you use a doorstop. But sometimes you could just stick like an old battery there, you know, car battery to also be a doorstop. But you wouldn't think of that logically, right? And that's a bad example. But
right. No, I get where
thinking
you're
like
headed on that.
thinking
Um,
sideways a bit.
let's see. What are feature flags? Your app.
I mean, it's got hooks, APIs, providers.
Yeah. See, you have to put in a feature flag client.
Oh,
Um,
I don't know enough about the actual mechanics, but I've never encountered it anywhere in any company I've ever worked in yet. So I wouldn't
yeah,
have
I
guessed.
haven't either. I understand the concept, but
Mm.
I have not gotten into.
Man, that guy sent it to me. Feature flags. The guy from Australia. He did a whole demo on it. He's got a great YouTube video. He's in Ortelius. He was in Ortelius and he became an ambassador, I think, for the
Right.
CDF2.
It's probably Ben or Brad.
I think it was Ben. It wasn't Brad, yeah. Ben Poe.
Yeah. So this looks like um, you're going coding changes. So we won't be able to
Adam. Adam
change
Gardner.
GitHub. Oh,
It's
Adam.
Adam
Okay.
Gardner.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. He did a great video. I might actually have it.
Steve, I shared another link. It's the feature flag for the GitHub action. Something called launch.leaf. Can you look into that?
Right.
We can
So
export this.
right. So what this is saying is you can implement a feature flag in your GitHub action, but again, we're back to updating the workflow, which we wanted to avoid.
Uh, I'll put another one there called Unleash.
So that's the tricky part about our goal is doing this without changing any of the tools that are out there.
Yeah. I was hoping we could piggyback off the hard work that other people have already done, right, and just use it for our use case, and then we don't have to maintain too much of it in that sense.
Yeah, and again, this is a API level type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a coding change. So you actually go in and change the code. Now, if we were just dealing with open source tools, like if we were just dealing with Jenkins and we were able to put a feature flag in there and um, into the Jenkins code base to turn stuff on and off, that would be a cool way to go. But I don't think we will. We got to be bigger and more generic. And again, you have to configure the endpoint of who you're going to talk to see if the feature flag's enabled or not. So we're back. It's kind of like a catch-22. If we know that the message broker URL is defined, then we don't need the feature flag tool.
Okay. Yeah, it's true. You want to find the most efficient
Not,
method,
yeah,
right?
not
Smallest
evasive.
changes. Yeah, exactly. I think I might have found it.
All right, what do you got?
Adam Gardner's. I'm just.
Oh, you found that one. All right.
He sent me the video because I spoke to him once about this. All right, cool. Here's his YouTube channel. I think it's on here. Yeah, I'm gonna post it in the channel for everybody. Where the heck is my chat gone? Oh, dang. Got too many screens.
Yeah. So basically, around the feature flag, we need to, like on that last one that you sent, it needs a URL to talk to query the service to figure out if a feature flag's turned on or off. So they're probably storing the feature flag in a database and making a call to that location. That's that same type of scenario that we've kind of talked about already.
No, wait, he's just did a video. He did a video a year ago. I don't know, this guy's so smart. He did a video now, open telemetry, open feature, cloud events, CD events, and OCSF.
Oh, cool. Can you
Yeah,
go
I
ahead and
stuck
share
it in the
that?
channel.
All right.
Yeah,
Did you put it? All right.
I put it in both. I put it
Do
in
you
Discord
have?
Dev.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really good, smart guy. He's got another video on the open feature one. Tracing GitLab pipelines with open telemetry. Wow, that's cool.
Well, that's interesting. We didn't even think about how
Yeah.
how we could possibly hook into open telemetry too.
Yeah, exactly. That's also a good one, right? Yeah, he's got a whole thing here on Nats in under 4 minutes. Hands-on intro to Nats in 4 minutes. Okay, just go there.
So, Sasha, the places that you've worked with, the companies, do they have open telemetry, like watching their GitLab or Bitbucket?
No, I've no.
I know.
That's why Ortelius, like since I joined Ortelius, like people think it's a joke, but it's really for real. I talk to people about stuff and they don't know what I'm talking about. My knowledge working with Ortelius, with yourself and Tracy and Tony and Brad and everybody, I'm like I talk another language now. People don't know what I'm talking about. I'm serious. They're so far behind. I don't know
Yeah.
if they're far behind. They're just not there. Companies can't move quick enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are dealing with alien.
Yeah, I am an alien. Totally.
All right. I'm going to check out the feature flag um, and you said that there's another one that Adam did on OpenTelemetry.
He did, man. He did a great one. It might even be the one that I posted, the one that's that combo of OpenTelemetry
Oh,
feature, Open Feature
okay,
Cloud events. It might even be that one. I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
okay, that's worth checking out.
Yeah. And here's his website. Maybe there's something there. I'll post it in the chat. I mean, I haven't worked for any company in South Africa yet that has Kubernetes. Although
Oh,
I've got a project. Yeah, it's like people are scared of containers. Yeah, that's my impression so far.
yeah, we ran into that in the States a while back. I had
Yeah,
the
we're always behind. Yeah.
yeah, the University of New Mexico. We were working with their IT department, and one of their admins, he basically said, "I want to only run virtual machines that I build from scratch, so I can ensure that there are no ways that it can be hacked." And because of that, we can't use Kubernetes or Docker because I don't know what is running in those. And it's like, well, you build the same stack and you can use your own. If you want to run Kubernetes on your own custom node that you build from scratch, you can. But he just couldn't get his
Yeah.
head around it.
I would think a virtual machine, the attack surface is even bigger because you've got an operating system stuck there.
Yeah, so
Whereas with a container, it's much more limited, right?
yeah, I mean, you could run like Linode, that company for Kubernetes. They'll run your Kubernetes on bare metal, with
Yeah,
no operating system. It's like a really small bootstrapped operating system. Get your node up and running. And
yeah,
I think that's how
exactly.
Google and AWS do it. They don't
Yeah,
run full virtual machines. They just run straight off of bare metal and in a small hypervisor layer.
exactly. Minimal footprint.
Yeah. Alrighty, well, good stuff for today. Um, we'll keep plugging along. I think next time we'll start working on. I'll put together a base requirements doc to get us going, and we can start filling in the pieces and build things out.
Cool.
And I'm going to grab these links from Julia real quick.
And I guess we'll see many of us tomorrow on the Secure Supply Chain Con.
Yep.
Yes.
Bring your
Take
beer,
care.
bring your
Yeah.
donuts, bring your coffee.
I think I
Alrighty,
found the
we'll see
video.
everybody tomorrow.
Okay, cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.